What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, man, we're going to go over a Call of Duty video, which has been something I haven't done in a while. But I've been playing Call of Duty again recently, just kind of getting back into MW3 again, kind of doing some Ultra Mastery stuff. In today's video, I want to do something a little differently, something that I haven't done in quite a while, but I wanted to make an update video for this for the guys that are new to the channel, that aren't looking back at my channel content from, a year or so ago, a couple months ago, whatever. So for those guys that are new to the channel that haven't looked back, I'm going to make a new one for you guys. So this is how to make the best build possible for every gun in the game once. Yes, first time, one time, make the best possible build you can make. Now, this is only going to work on games where your attachments and levels for guns are all unlocked and they're not adding any more items to the game. So, for example, Black Ops 6, this may not work because what a gun is now on BO6 may not be the same for it later down the line after multiple seasons, multiple new attachments, new nerfs, buffs, etc. So keep that in mind. But for games like Modern Warfare 3, you can absolutely do this trick. So let's go into it. So when you're making a gun build, you want to keep in mind the weapon you are choosing, okay? Because every weapon you choose will determine the build that you're going for. Now, you can see majority of my class setups are the same. I don't really mess around with my field grades, my tactical lethals, and perks. Those all pretty much stay the same. I mostly try to swap around my melee weapons depending on what I need them for. Right now I'm doing the Ultra Mastery, so some of the classes I have like a gold combat knife so that I can work on the Ultra Mastery for that. But you could always, if you're playing Search and Destroy, run a Soul Ender as your secondary, because the Soul Ender is one of the only melees in the game, actually it's the only melee in the game, that can melee through a riot shield when you use the animation kill. Animation kill is going to be activated by the right trigger, I believe it is, for PlayStation 5. For Xbox and PC, I have no idea what your controls are over there, so you just have to figure out your controls because your in-game list, and it will tell you what control it is. But when you choose a weapon, it's going to determine how you play with that build, how you move around the map with it, all these things, and how fast the time to kill is, how good the recoil control is, all of that stuff. So let's go look at what we can do here. So let's go find a gun that has a lot of recoil. Um, let's do the Swarm. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to not use my custom build. I'm going to show you how to build this gun from the ground up. So the Swarm is a gun that a lot of people have issues with. A lot of people think it's bad. A lot of people think it is a not a good gun overall to use. And I disagree with that, because the Swarm has one of the fastest time to kills up close. So in the bottom left-hand corner, you guys can see the bars. You have damage, fire rate, range, accuracy, recoil control, mobility, and handling. Now, these are important. So damage is what it sounds like, damage. Fire rate is the amount of bullets you can shoot out of per second. This has a very high, has one of the highest fire rates in the game. You have range, which is how far you can shoot and deal damage and kills. You have accuracy, which is going to be how accurate, how pinpoint accurate it is going to be. So when you're aiming and stuff, when you hit the shots, all that, where the bolts go, all that type of stuff. Accuracy is going to be how accurate those bullets hit the target and how much damage they do per those targets. So the better the accuracy, the more damage pinpoint you're going to do when you hit a target at a farther range. You have recoil control, which is exactly what it sounds like. You just focus on the recoil. That's going to help you with controlling how much kickback or sway up, down your gun is going to have. Mobility is exactly what it sounds like. Mobility is going to be for your speed at which you move, slide, pull your gun up, all that type of stuff. Handling, again, handling and mobility going to go hand in hand with each other. They both involve the movement of the gun and interactions with the gun around speed. So that is the basic parameters of how we're going to adjust this gun based off of those bars. Now, those bars aren't accurate. Do keep that in mind. When you were looking at these bars, take them with a grain of salt. The thing with Call of Duty, compared to a lot of games that have these bars as the way to determine their eligibility for being good weapons, Call of Duty leaves a lot of leeway in their bars. Those are the base understandings of the way the guns are coded. That's how they go off the bars. So even if a gun has a really high damage output according to the bar, it may not be a good gun in game. But they say that because the damage output this gun is doing is severely high. But it might be lackluster in another department that is not listed here. There may be an issue with how maybe this gun shoots slower in speed compared to a gun that shoots faster in speed. Because remember, just like in real life, right, a gun that fires really slow can be sometimes weaker than a gun that shoots fast, even though the gun that's shooting faster has a lot less size and caliber, right? If you take a 9mm, but it's going extremely fast and you're shooting a lot of 9mm in the same direction, it's going to probably do a lot more damage in the grand scheme of things than a single 5.56 round or even a single 7.62 round. It just really depends because those rounds are usually going either slower or they're going fast, but you're not shooting nearly as many. Again, it's a very complicated thing, but understanding that when you build this gun or any gun in the game is going to help you kind of base your builds off of that. And you can always do very simple arcade style customization where you don't worry about the bars. You just go in here and do what I'm saying. So all this pre decision making you can completely ignore if you wanted to. I don't always do this. It's usually if I'm sitting down when I do my base my gun build days that are designated, entire days designated to working out builds and trying out different builds and making sure they all work. I do this, but usually if I'm in the moment, if I'm just picking the swarm to play with, I usually have a build set up. If I don't, I just go through really quick and look at these stats. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to show you guys how to do the stats, and then we're going to build it. So for any gun, you're going to go into the weapon category, and you're going to see these options here. On the bottom left-hand corner, you can see R2, or not R2, I'm sorry, L2, which is going to be the left trigger for the PS5 guys out there. That's going to bring up something called advanced stats. Now, these advanced stats are probably, in my opinion, the best advanced stats we have in Call of Duty. BO6 players might be familiar with advanced stats because you guys also do have this feature, but it is not nearly as good as this game because this game tells you in the percentages. So that game is going to show you kind of decimal points, I think it is, which is not that great for basic understanding. It's a lot easier to explain 17% to someone instead of 7.0017. Right? Okay, it's much easier to say 17% of your recoil is going to be reduced, 17% of your damage is increased, etc. So it's much easier to say that. So let's go over some of the parameters. So these are all the bars that we had just talked about: damage, range, fire rate, recoil accuracy, mobility, and handling. So you once you're here, it's very simple. There are certain things you're just not going to care about. Basically, fire accuracy, for example, all the accuracies stuff is basically useless from most weapons because recoil, mobility, handling, and range all kind of go hand in hand. So if you have all those in the green or most of those in the green, the accuracy will just kind of fall into place. Fire rate is pretty much useless. Unless you are on a specific weapon that needs increase in fire rate, and usually a ammo type like a one of the ammunitions, I think it's what hollow point or whatever, is usually a faster round that increases your fire rate. So unless you do that, you won't really notice any changes to the fire rate, majority of the time anyway. Some barrels will increase your fire rate, so just keep that aware. But there's also another really cool feature here. You can see the damage percentage per body part. So headshot damage, upper torso, lower torso, upper legs, and the target flinch. So right now this swarm default only has about 0.7 flinch, which means when you shoot someone, they're not going to flinch basically at all, which is a huge problem with the big problem is with the swarm and why people think it's trash. Because if you're not using the right attachments, this thing is going to shoot someone and feel like a pistol, like a machine gun pistol, because it's not having any flinch. There's no high damage, no good range, no control with the gun. So just keep that in mind. Damage values are based on hits within the effective damage range. So what this means is this game is basically just saying, hey, be aware that your damage outputs are good, but you must be within the specific damage range that this gun is designed. So for example, the default swarm is designed for an effective damage range of 5.6 meters. Which I believe is what, like 6 foot, 7 foot, or whatever it is. I'm not very good at measurements, so don't mind me. But its minimum damage range is about 34.3 meters. Okay, so pretty standard stuff is really good for the majority of it. Bullet velocity is about 450 rounds per second, or 450 meters per second. I don't know if I said rounds, idiot. So just keep that in mind as well. This thing has a very, very fast fire rate, completely insane fire rate. So going in, let's go over some of the barrels. So we see here this barrels. There's a couple of different options, but one thing we're going to keep an eye out for is these two right here. Now, every gun's going to be different. Some guns are going to have really OP barrels. Some are not going to have any barrels at all. The M16 is a perfect example of this. M16 has no good barrels at all. There's just not a single one. So you have to keep in mind of that. So you can build your guns kind of based on the perimeter. Usually a good suppressor, a good barrel, good hand grip, good stock, good magazine is all you really need. Sometimes you swap out the stock with a red dot. It just really depends. So let's go into it. So this barrel is the best barrel for the Swarm. The Reckless 90 long barrel. And why is it the best? Because you're seeing a whole lot of red. And that's okay. Because remember, the accuracy red doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, right? It is not an important thing. It is something that the accuracy bar can be severely exaggerated for its negatives, usually, to make it look like the item is not overpowered. I think that's why they do that, so that way, if it's a good barrel, but your accuracy is kind of fucked up a little bit, they're like, well, now it's a balanced barrel. In all actuality, if you're good at the game, you can pretty much counterbalance the accuracy issues. So, why is this a good barrel? Well, first off, the biggest thing is the damage range. I mean, you got an increase of 32% for your effective range, an increase of 32% for your minimum range, and a 24% increase to your bullet velocity. This is going to make the Swarm shoot almost double as quick. All right, you went from what, 450, I think it was prior, 450 to 556, almost 560 in RPM. So that is an absolute insane amount of fire rate increase. Now, another big thing with this barrel is the recoil control, because that's going to be a big problem with the Swarm. Is you're going to have to know how to control that recoil. We can build this thing to the ends of the world, but there is going to still be recoil, and I think having any little bit of recoil buff is important. So let's pop this barrel in. Well, actually, before we do that, let's show what this gun's like base. Okay, we have kind of an idea now. So let's hop this barrel on. So now we have the barrel. Let's do suppressors next. So I usually like to go counterclockwise when I'm making builds for the most part, but it is really up to you. So I'm going to pull that advanced stock again, advanced stats again. And we're going to look at this first suppressor. You can do this for all the suppressors in the game, but the sonic suppressor is probably, in my opinion, the best suppressor in the game. It is the only suppressor that's not going to kill your ADS speed and give you damage range increase. So it's very, very good. A lot of the suppressors will give you damage increase that might be greater than the sonic, but your negatives are so much higher that it's not even worth running it. So sonic is definitely the best, easily. But what makes a sonic so good? Well, like I said before, there is hardly any mobility or handling negatives. Actually, zero mobility negatives, which is huge. And the handling, you lose about 2% of your sprint to fire speed. So you go from 210, 110 milliseconds, I think it's considered as, down to 108. So you're only losing about 2%, which is not bad at all. That's like barely even noticeable. An important note to remember is if it's below 5%, probably not a noticeable thing, except for ranges and for damage outputs. So those two categories, any percentage will make a difference. But it's important to note that in like recoil control, mobility, etc. like that, below 5%, really not going to do a whole lot noticeable changes to it. So don't panic about if you see a barrel that has a 5% reduction in ADS speed or 5% reload quickness deduction is really not that crazy. You're probably not going to notice it. Probably. So we're going to put this suppressor on, since this is the suppressor that is the best. We'll put that cool suppressor style on. So we're just going underbarrel. But the thing with this is, remember that we're going to do an underbarrel for the Swarm, but keep in mind that you can kind of choose what guns have what attachments. For example, I don't put scopes on my SMGs. I might put an occasional red dot on something like the Swarm because I'm really not a fan of the iron sights. But majority of the SMGs, when you see me play the game in my videos or on stream or just see me playing the game naturally with my friends, you're going to take notice that I'm not running optics on pretty much any of my SMGs. And there's a specific reason for that. Not only do most of these SMGs need maybe a stock, or most of them need underbarrels, and I'm already gonna have a barrel and a muzzle, a magazine, and a rear grip, sometimes an ammunition. So I have to have that extra spot focused for stocks or underbarrels. But there's another reason. Majority of the SMGs perform much better without an optic. Put an optic on an MP5, run it for a couple games, take the optic off the MP5, run it for a couple games, and I guarantee you will see that there's a massive improvement for your experience with that weapon in the on optic version. Okay, so again, it just depends. Like ARs, majority of the time running an optic for the ARs. Or for snipers, I'm usually running default scope. I'm not really running ACOGs. LMGs kind of depends. Sometimes I'll run a scope on them. So shotguns, no scope, but I'm also not usually shotguns. I'll stay away from suppressors because suppressors don't really have that great of an effect with shotguns in this game. So again, every category has their attachment that doesn't work, right? Something that just doesn't seem to work well with that gun. So you will figure this out as you go. Maybe optics will be your fine thing for you for SMGs, but maybe big magazines will be the thing that you will hate on SMGs. So when you go through the guns, try different builds. Even if that build that you made the first time is fantastic, don't be afraid to try other builds. Make secondary, third, fourth, fifth builds, and kind of try around and play around with it. Because you might find that some builds are really good, even when you think they shouldn't be. A really good example of this was the Beretta, the handgun. I had a build, or not the Beretta, I'm sorry, the, what is it, the Bastion? I think it's in that right, the Bastion, which is the 44 Magnum, if that was from Modern Warfare 2. In this game, they released the Walking Dead update, and when there was the Walking Dead update, one of the builds that they had predetermined in the Battle Pass was amazing. I mean, one-shotting people from halfway across the map with the Bastion, and I've not been able to replicate that build. Even when I've remade the build based off of the same attachments, I still couldn't replicate it. So there is certain builds of certain guns, and maybe even certain variants that do just feel better. Just keep that in mind. So without further ado, let's hop into the underbarrels. Now, underbarrels are probably the most complicated part of this entire process because there's so many options, and every single grip in the game is basically doing the same exact thing, but each of them are basically different percentages of each thing. If that makes any sense. Now, DR6 hand stop is probably the most used thing for me because usually my stock, I'm going to put a heavier stock on my gun. That's going to do a lot of my recoil control for me. And plus, I'm just very good at the game. And so recoil control really isn't that important to me because I know I'm going to be able to handle it in game. Because Call of Duty is not a complicated game. So I usually use a DR6 hand stop. This is a more of a mobility grip than it is anything else. This is basically going to give you better movement, better crouch movement, better ADS movement, better ADS speed, and better STS or STFPS, which is sprint to fire speed. So keep that in mind. It depends on what you want. The Bruin Heavy Grip is still very good. The Camaro Ryan 03, the Camaro Seraphific, the SL Skeletal, those are all very good grips in their own rights. They all do very specific things designated for their specific task. So just find what works for you. There's one grip I want you to stay away from. That is this grip right here. This is the Jack Slasher. Stay away from this. The amount of people I see running this Jack Slash grip is absolutely insane. It is not a good grip. You're not gaining anything important out of this. You are basically going to waste an attachment slot, okay? That is all you're doing. The vertical recoil this thing gives can easily be found by using the Skeletal, by using the Seraphific, using the Ryan 03. So, plenty of options for people that are looking for that. There's also other stuff in here as well that you will see on these on guns. Now, this SMGs don't have it, but you can find these things elsewhere. And that is going to be things like smoke tubes, 40 mics, shotguns, chainsaw underbarrels, flamethrower underbarrels, shotgun underbarrels, whatever it is, right? So there's tons of options for underbarrels. So just go through them, figure out what's works for you. I usually stay away from explosive underbarrels or even the chainsaw or shotgun or SMG underbarrels, whatever available, because those things usually just don't help in the grand scheme of things. So I would stay away from them. If you want to have a build that has one on for fun, maybe go for it. But if you're looking for just good builds, stat-wise, don't run them. They're not very good. And again, you can go through these lists of grips as much as you want. There are so many options, but be aware that most of these grips are going to hurt your ADS speed. So be smart. Be smart when you're going through these. Pay attention to the stats. Make sure you're keeping an eye on these handlings, mobility, because the handling and mobility are probably the most two vital important areas when it comes to ADS speed, movement speed, and the crouch movement speed, and sprint to fire speed. Those are going to be the big four things you're going to be paying attention to, because those things are the most used and most important and most visualized stat. You will notice a gun that has a 10% reduction in movement speed. You will notice that. So be aware of that. So for this purpose of this video, we're going to go with the skeletal grip, because the skeletal grip gives us a bonus on ADS and sprint to fire, and we get that bonus of recoil control for main gun recoil and then the vertical recoil. Let's put that on. So magazine. Now magazines are a little different because magazines really come down to how much ADS speed you want to lose. That is frequently the most biggest problem with these mags. So you can see here that the 25 rounder, so this normally has a 32 rounder, so if you want to go low, so go with 20 or 25, you will see a massive increase in speed. But you will lose a lot of ammo, and this thing's gonna burn through that 25 rounder, I can promise you that. So usually what I'll do is I'll go for a 50 or a 40. Now you could go for 100 mag around mag, but you can see there that the negatives are insane. And this is why it's so freaking important to pay attention to your stats on guns and make sure that when you're using these builds and you're building these builds that you are compensating, because when you go to these magazines sections, right, or you go to the ammo type sections where there might be negatives for a good build, for a good item, make sure that the grips and stocks and the fire rates and all that stuff, the barrels, all that stuff is basically doing what these mags are going to cause negative effects in, right? So keep that in mind. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to show you the 40 rounder. I think the 40 rounder is a really solid choice. 40 rounds is about standard issue for most SMGs in the game. Most. So it works. We're going to go back to ammunition real quick because I completely forgot about ammunition because it's something I rarely ever use other than SMGs. So there's a bunch of options for ammo types in the game. So important to note, there is one amazing ammo type per pretty much every gun in the game. And that is usually, I believe, high green. I think that's usually the best ammo type in the game. It's usually the same stat-wise for all guns. It may be names a bit different, but keep that in mind. That is always an option. So we're going to put on the 9mm high green rounds. We're going to put that on. Well, actually, you know what? For the purpose of this video, we're not going to put the high grain rounds. I want to show you guys what it's like without the high grain. So let's go to grip. So grips, we have a couple choices here, and by a couple, I mean 3. And you can see that this one, not really important. You're losing ADS movement speed, but you're getting flinch resistance, so take that as you will. The TAC 20 grip, not really getting any recoil control. You're actually losing some, but you're getting some sprint to fire speed. Really not that great. But the Marauder grip is going to give you some good recoil control, so we're going to put that on. Stock, same thing for this. We're going to look here and see what's the best options here, and it does seem that the Fortress Heavy stock is going to be our best option here for that, so we're going to put that on. And we're actually out of space. So this is the unfortunate side effect of building builds. You have to determine what is worth more than the other. So for this purpose of this, I'm actually going to say that the Marauder grip is not as important as this Fortress Heavy stock. So we're going to swap that out. Now what we have done is we've basically, in theory, have just made a great swarm build. Now this isn't the swarm build I usually use, but I will say that this is probably the better option for an iron sight swarm player. So let's go into game and see how different it is. Look how straight that is. Compared to what it was before, there is still recoil, like I said there would be, but it is still very, very straight, and it's still very, very easy to control. I mean, I'm just lightly pulling down on the analog, and it's staying where I want it to stay. The damage output seems pretty good. Now, again, the thing with the Swarm, you have to keep in mind, the Swarm has always been a gun that has struggles with holding out a lot of damage. So keep that in mind when you're running the Swarm, but otherwise, we have just made a very good class. I'm actually going to save this class. We're going to save vid class. Bam. Save that, and we're done. So I hope this guys' video has been helpful for you guys. I know it's something that I could always go more in depth with this, but this is really just the basicness of it, is pay attention to the stats. Make sure that you're being aware of every single finite detail you're making. So if you're changing something, maybe go and look at the stats, that you have overall and see how you can change that in the future. Now, like I said, with modern games, this is going to be a problem, but every COD that is no longer being updated, this is a very perfectly able strat. Now, if you're playing a COD that doesn't have advanced stats, you're going to have to do a lot of trial and error. This is what I used to do in the past for builds. What I used to do builds in Infinite, and MW3, and MW4, and Ghost, and AW, and whatever COD that I was playing, World War II, a lot. Is just trial and error. So build a build, keep track of what you're trying, write it down in a notebook, go into a private match, put 2 or 3 AI in there that are like hardened veteran bots that you can like get a semi-real player experience, and just try the build out and see how well it is, how it performs, and kind of go from there. But for this card, for example, that has advanced stats, you can definitely just do the way I showed because it's very, very simple. It all can be done here in the menu. You can see advanced stats in-game as well, so if you need to change something in-game, just pop that advanced stats option on and go through the attachments and you'll be good to go. So I hope this video helps you guys build your builds. I have more tips and tricks coming for this game, especially since I know there's a lot of people coming back to MW3 because of BO6 being pretty bad right now. So I'm going to try to get as much help out for you guys as much as possible, as well as content for other games as well, and other projects that I have going on. But I wanted to do a COD video, man, because it's been a while. So hope this is helpful. If you guys have any questions, let them down below. If you have anything that you think I should change with these builds when I'm doing these videos, or anything you disagree with, let me know down below. I'm interested to hear it. I have a lot of experience in this game, over 1,500 plus hours, but there's always something that is new, even for an experienced player like myself. So I'd love to hear it down below. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.